Greetings and welcome to the Portraits in Fitness channel. My name is David. Today, I want to talk about my relationship with coffee. We've been together for over 40 years. It's been one of the loves of my life. I like it strong and black. When someone asks if I want room for cream and sugar, I say, no, I take coffee in my coffee, thanks. Maybe it's a New York thing. We don't drink latte. At least we never did. Coffee and I were especially hot and heavy during college. That's when I got my first coffee maker in my dorm room and I went to town. I'd have a coffee after dinner at the dining hall, mostly to procrastinate from doing homework. And when I finally got back to my room to study, I'd make a whole pot of coffee. Sometimes I'd have 2 or 3 mugs, intent on studying through the night, but just get sleepy and crash anyway. My whole adult life, I've had a strong cup of coffee each morning upon waking, and sometimes another one later that morning, or maybe in the afternoon. Maybe it's being on a carnivore diet for over 4 months now, but I'm not liking this relationship as much as before. These days, coffee feels less like my muse and inspiration and more like a dominatrix that puts me in my place. Not that I would know from actual experience. Many mornings I've found myself putting off doing anything, whether starting work, making calls, going to the gym, or feeding my cat. Sorry, Tiao Tiao. Until I have that mug full of rich, steamy coffee in my hands. Did I mention I really like it dark? Sumatra is my favorite. I honestly feel like an addict who wakes up and the first thing he thinks of is getting a fix. I'm not promising to quit drinking coffee entirely. Rather, instead of being like the one pining away for an ex who's moved on, drawn back to something that didn't work out, I want to be able to say I can live without her and move on. So yesterday I went a full day without any coffee. And let me tell you, it was brutal. The morning was all right, but I found myself thinking, you could always start tomorrow or never at all. No one will never know. By the afternoon, I was overtaken by a dull headache and grogginess. I was a wreck and essentially useless by 5 p.m. I was actually thinking of having coffee every other day to cut my intake in half. But today is day 2, and so far, so good. And even on the way to my studio today, it's just, there's tons of cafes and there were even lines outside the door. But I resisted the urge, and so far, I'm doing okay. I try and remind myself of this awesome quote that I came upon recently that says, don't feed your problems with thoughts, starve them with actions. So instead of going to make a cup of coffee or get a cup of coffee, I'm trying to remind myself to fill that void with good habits and good thoughts. I've actually had thoughts of quitting coffee or reducing my coffee intake before in my life, but I've never taken action, at least to any concrete measure. Over 20 years ago, I actually corresponded pretty extensively with somebody who had a website with the URL, "Will you quit drinking coffee with me?" And I still remember his name. That website isn't around anymore, so I wonder what became of that. And hi, Brian, if you're watching this. I was actually thinking of having coffee every other day to cut my intake in half, but today is day 2 and I'm actually doing quite good. I'm doing better. It's way better than yesterday. And I'm keeping a coffee diary. I'm actually writing down my sensations, my urges, and sleep quality. The 3 main reasons I want to regain control of my relationship with coffee are, first, that feeling of addiction that I mentioned before. I want to be in control. I don't want to feel addicted or controlled by compulsions and urges. Maybe it aligns with the sensations of hunger that I've experienced since turning to a carnivore way of eating 4.5 months ago. But I feel like I'm more in touch with those urges or whatever urges I may have. And I want to know that those feelings and urges are coming from me, from an authentic place. Secondly is gut health. Now, I don't know too much about this, but I've heard that coffee is supposedly not good for the microbiome. I'll need more information, research on that, and some firsthand experience. So we'll see. Certainly, consuming a cup of hot coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning is probably not a good thing. And third, and very importantly, is sleep quality. That's really one piece that I feel hasn't fallen into place since I've gone on Carnivore. My sleep has not been the greatest. It's been deeper. It feels deeper, but I think there's plenty of room for improvement there. So I want to be on natural cycles and not have caffeine determine my energy level and the timing of my sleep. And lastly, I'm not a big data or science guy, but I think it will be both interesting and instructive to track a few numbers along with my subjective feelings or perceptions over this process. So that includes perceived sleep quality, my alertness, noting things like headaches, cravings, and then just how my gut feels in general. Also hydration, and maybe it's me being over 50, but nighttime urination, timing and frequency. Or maybe it's just because I'm hydrating all the time on Carnivore. So as far as metrics, I have a Garmin watch that measures sleep duration, heart rate variability, HRV, and the quantity of deep sleep and REM sleep, REM sleep. Those, again, are according to my Garmin watch. So I'm not a big numbers guy, but that could be informative if I see an upward trend. I'm particularly interested in the HRV, heart rate variability. So that does it for today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you can, please comment down below if you've had any struggles quitting coffee or reducing coffee intake. I'm sure there's a lot of people who say, hell no, that's the last thing that you'll pry from my cold, dead fingers is that hot, steamy coffee mug. But I do need to change my relationship with coffee, and that's all I'm setting out to do. So until the next video, as always, thank you for watching and be good to yourself.